0-day brief.
So I want you to imagine a bank vault, right? And it's being marketed to the world as absolutely impenetrable.
Like a foot of solid steel everywhere.
Exactly. The steel is incredibly thick, the hinges are forged from titanium, and the front door is just this absolute masterpiece of modern engineering.
Right.
But then, you walk around to the back of the building and there's just a flimsy screen door.
Oh, man.
And it doesn't even have a lock on it. Like, nobody bothered to check that back door because everyone was just so mesmerized by the glossy marketing brochures about the front door.
Yeah, they just assumed the whole thing was secure.
Right. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a pretty massive stack of vulnerability reports, technical notes, and research papers concerning a very specific, very critical piece of industrial cybersecurity hardware.
The Waterfall WF500 Unidirectional Gateway.
That's the one. And our mission today is to figure out how this airtight, supposedly physically unbreachable security device, a device trusted to protect things like nuclear power plants and oil pipelines, how it was completely compromised.
And the spoiler here, which is just wild, is that the attackers didn't have to break the impenetrable hardware. They found that screen door around the back.
Yeah.
And the timing on this is crucial for anyone listening who works in or around critical infrastructure. Because on May 29th, researchers disclosed 9 critical vulnerabilities affecting the software that manages these waterfall gateways.
9 of them.
9. And we are talking about vulnerabilities that essentially hand over the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
This hardware sits at the absolute most sensitive perimeter in industrial networks. It's literally guarding the systems that keep the lights on and the water clean.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we get into the actual details of the vulnerabilities, how the system failed so spectacularly, I think we need to establish a baseline. Like, what does this device actually do?
Right. Let's do that.
Because if you're going to trust a single gray box to protect a nuclear power plant, it must be doing something pretty extraordinary.
Right. Oh, absolutely. So we have to start with the geography of an industrial network. Waterfall Security Solutions, they've been a major player in this space since, I think, 2007.
Wow, so a long time.
Yeah, nearly 2 decades. And they build these gateways that sit directly on the boundary between 2 fundamentally different digital worlds. So on one side, you have the operational technology network, right? The OT side.
And that's where the actual physical stuff happens?
Exactly. That's the physical world being controlled by computers. It's your programmable logic controllers that are, spinning turbines, opening massive water valves, regulating chemical mixtures.
Okay. And then on the other side?
On the other side is your information technology network, the IT side. So this is your standard corporate environment.
Right. People at desks?
Yeah, human resources, sending emails, people browsing the web, accounting, downloading PDFs, all that normal office stuff.
And obviously, if you're managing a power grid, you really, really do not want someone on the IT side clicking a bad link in a phishing email.
Oh, definitely not.
And accidentally giving a hacker a direct pathway into the turbine controls on the OT side. Like, there has to be a massive wall between them.
That is the exact gap the WF500 is supposed to bridge, but it does it using a physical hardware diode.
Cool. What does that mean exactly?
Well, think about a standard network cable, right?
Yeah.
Data can flow back and forth like a two-way street.
Yeah, like normal internet.
Right. But a unidirectional gateway actually changes the physics of the connection. It uses a transmit host on the highly secure OT side and a receive host on the corporate IT side.
Right.
And they are connected by a fiber optic cable.
Fiber optic, so they use light to transmit data, right?
Yes. And this is where the hardware engineering is genuinely brilliant. The module on the OT side has a laser transmitter to send light pulses out. But the module on the IT side literally, physically lacks the photoelectric receiver circuit to send light back.
Wait, really? It just doesn't have the part?
Exactly. It physically cannot generate a signal in the reverse direction. So data literally, physically, can only flow one way. Out from the plant to the corporate network for monitoring, but never, ever back in. As the engineers love to say, the laws of optics dictate that data only moves in one direction.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you there. Because if the physics of a one-way fiber optic cable actually work, and the physical capacity to send data backwards just straight up doesn't exist on the circuit board, isn't the device actually unhackable? I mean, you can't hack physics. If you're sitting on the IT network, you cannot force a light beam to travel backwards up a dark tube. That's impossible.
What's fascinating here is, well, you are entirely correct about the physics.
Right.
You cannot hack the one-way flow of light. The physical diode actually works perfectly, But the fatal flaw is that this device doesn't exist in a vacuum.
There it is.
Yeah, the transmit and receive hardware, they have to be housed inside host machines, right? And those host machines have to be configured. So they both run web-based management software.
Of course they do. Software ruins everything.
It really does. Specifically, they have an admin web UI for configuration and a console web UI for, administration and troubleshooting. And those software interfaces have to listen for connections on the network.
Ah, okay. So you've built this perfect, impenetrable physical wall of light and glass, but you've just bolted a piece of software onto the side of it so you can manage it.
Exactly. You've introduced complex code into a hardware equation.
And code has bugs.
Always. Because the device relies on these network-exposed web interfaces for just, daily administration, the physics of the fiber cable are no longer the only line of defense. An attacker doesn't need to figure out how to bend the laws of optics.
They just talk to the software instead.
Right. They just need to find a way to talk to the web server that controls the host machine. If you can compromise the software managing the OT host, you completely bypass the glass tube. It doesn't even matter anymore.
Wow. So if the physics are sound, and the fiber optic cable is literally a dead end, how did the attackers actually get in? I know we have a researcher named Luca Borzacchiello from Nozomi Networks Labs who published the whole breakdown of this attack path. So let's walk through what Nozomi actually found.
Yeah, Nozomi Networks Labs did a phenomenal job dissecting this thing. They uncovered 9 distinct CVEs, that's common vulnerabilities and exposures affecting firmware versions 7.9.1.0 and anything earlier than that.
Okay, 9 CVEs is a lot for one device.
It's massive, and if you look at the CVSS scores, the system we use to measure the severity and impact of a vulnerability on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, 10 being the absolute worst case scenario.
Right, well, these range from 9.1 to 9.8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but honestly, the most terrifying detail for any security professional looking at this report is this. Every single one of these is remotely exploitable, and every single one is unauthenticated.
Okay, let's highlight that for a second. If you're listening to this and wondering what unauthenticated means in this context, it basically means your incredibly complex, randomly generated 30-character password doesn't matter at all.
Not even a little bit.
The attacker doesn't need it. They don't have to guess it. They just bypass the login screen entirely.
Exactly. The attack chain that Borzacchiello outlined is startlingly straightforward, precisely because they don't need those credentials. So, step 1, the attacker just reaches the console web UI over the network.
Which is easy because these interfaces are often accessible right at the OT-IT boundary, right?
Right, so they find the login page. Then step 2 is where the screen door swings wide open. This relies on CVE-2025-41273, which is an authentication bypass vulnerability.
Authentication bypass. Okay, how does that actually happen in the software? Because earlier we used the analogy of having a high-tech retinal scanner and a keypad, but also a giant button next to them that just says skip.
Right, the skip button.
Yeah, I want to make sure we ground that in the technical reality. Like, what is the code actually doing wrong?
So in software terms, this usually happens when the system's session validation logic is fundamentally flawed. Think about when you log into a normal web panel. The server usually hands your browser a unique token or a cookie.
Okay, like a digital wristband at a concert.
Perfect analogy, yes. Every time you click a new page, the server checks that wristband to verify you are still you and that you actually have admin rights.
Right.
But in an authentication bypass, the attacker might send a specifically malformed request, or maybe an empty header, or they exploit some tiny flaw in how that token is generated.
And the server just panics.
Basically. The server gets confused by the unexpected input, and instead of rejecting the request, which is what it should do, its fail-safe logic completely breaks. It just hands the attacker a valid session cookie anyway.
You're kidding. It just gives them the VIP wristband.
It does. The system literally tricks itself into believing the attacker is a totally authorized administrator.
So the attacker just walks right past the bouncer. That is wild. Okay, and once they're inside the admin panel with full privileges, what's step 3?
So step 3 is usually about covering their tracks, and they do this using CVE-2025-41273. This one is a path traversal and file deletion vulnerability in the admin web UI.
Path traversal. That sounds like someone wandering through computer folders they really shouldn't be allowed to see.
That is the exact mechanism. So picture the file directory of a computer as a tree, right?
Okay.
The web server is only supposed to have access to one specific little branch of that tree, say, a folder containing the website's images and HTML file.
Right, the public-facing stuff.
Yeah. But if the software doesn't sanitize the input properly, an attacker can ask the server for a file named using // characters.
Ah, I remember this from old school hacking stuff.
Exactly. In computer systems, // simply means go up one directory level. So the attacker sends a request for a file named, // var log messages.
And they just back out of the web folder entirely.
Yep, they do. They escape the web folder, they traverse all the way up to the base operating system, and they access the core system logs.
Well, wait, because you said it's a file deletion vulnerability too, so they don't just read the logs to see what's going on?
Nope, they delete them.
Wow. They literally erase the security camera tapes so the system administrators have absolutely no idea someone was just poking around in their nuclear plant gateway.
Exactly. It's a ghost operation.
Yeah,
And that leaves the system perfectly primed for step 4, which is the real payload.
the big one.
The big one. This involves CVEs 2025-41269 through 41277. These are 7 distinct OS command injection vulnerabilities, all sitting right there in the console web UI.
Okay, well, let's really break down command injection because this is where the total takeover happens,
Yeah.
right? Like, usually the system is asking the user for some really basic input.
Right, maybe the admin panel has a little diagnostic tool asking for an IP address to ping just to check if the network is alive. Super common feature.
Yeah, I've used those. So you type in an IP address, but the interface just takes whatever text you type into that box and passes it straight to the system's command shell to execute the ping, doesn't it?
That's exactly it. And the vulnerability exists because there is zero sanitization. None. The system doesn't check if you actually typed a valid IP address. It just blindly runs whatever you hand it.
Meaning, and tell me if I have this right, I could type in an IP address, but then just add a semicolon.
Yeah.
And then type a completely different, highly malicious operating system command right after it.
Okay.
So the server runs the ping, hits the semicolon, and thinks, oh, the first command is done, and then immediately executes whatever I type next.
You've just described the textbook execution of command injection.
That is so simple, it's scary.
It really is. The attacker can type in a command to create a new hidden user account, download malware from the internet, or change network routing rules. And because the web server runs with high privileges, whatever command the attacker injects is executed with deep administrative control over the entire host machine.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we look at this entire attack chain, it's a perfect 3-act heist,
Oh, I like that.
right? Act 1, the burglar finds a VIP pass just lying on the sidewalk. That's the authentication bypass, tricking the token logic.
Yep.
Act 2, they use that pass to walk straight into the security room and delete the camera footage. That's your path traversal and file deletion.
Smooth and quiet.
And then Act 3, they grab the building's PA system and just start giving their own orders to the staff. That's the command injection, giving them root access to the operating system.
And the result of grabbing that PA system is total, absolute compromise of the gateway. The attacker now has arbitrary code execution on the OT side host.
Which means the physical wall doesn't matter.
Exactly. They have entirely bypassed the hardware diode. They aren't trying to send data backward through the fiber cable, which we know is impossible.
Yeah.
They are already sitting on the machine on the sensitive side of the physical wall. From there, the industrial network is wide open. They can manipulate the programmable logic controllers that manage the physical plant machinery. They can deploy ransomware across the factory floor. Or they can just sit there and quietly exfiltrate highly sensitive operational data over months and months.
It's incredible. And honestly, a little terrifying. Because this level of compromise didn't happen because of one silly little coding typo.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get 9 critical vulnerabilities, including 7 different command injections, by accident.
No, you really don't.
A command injection means that developers literally forgot to check if the user input was safe 7 different times. This feels like a systemic design philosophy that just assumed that the management interface didn't need to be secure in the first place.
You hit the nail on the head. It points directly to a systemic blind spot in how we design security appliances in this industry.
Yeah.
7OS command injection flaws represent a clear pattern. It shows us that this web UI was built like an internal tool that would only ever be used by trusted friends.
Right, like a tool you'd run on your home network, not at a water treatment plant.
Exactly. The developers seemingly ignored the reality that any user input on a network-exposed interface is inherently dangerous, regardless of where the device sits.
Is it because they believe their own marketing hype? Like, did they assume the hardware diode was so good, so physically perfect, that they just didn't even bother to harden the admin panel?
I mean, we can't know for sure, but the engineering mindset appears to have been exactly that. We have an unbreachable hardware diode. The laws of physics protect the OT network. Therefore, why spend significant engineering resources hardening an admin panel that sits behind what we believe is an impenetrable physical wall?
Wow.
It is a deeply flawed assumption. The idea that a strong primary defense mechanism automatically extends this halo of invulnerability to the management plane is just false.
You know, that dynamic sounds incredibly familiar to me. I'm thinking back in episode 9, we did a deep dive into a major flaw with Microsoft Defender.
Oh, yeah.
And this feels like the exact same architectural trap, doesn't it?
That Microsoft Defender case is the perfect parallel. We saw the exact same paradox there. The security architecture itself actually creates the attack surface.
Right. The very
Ooh.
tool you deploy to protect the environment becomes the vector that compromises the environment.
Exactly. Defender had trust boundaries that collapsed internally. And here, Waterfall has a hardware barrier that is genuinely amazing, but a software management plane that was apparently treated as totally out of scope for rigorous security testing.
But wait, hold on. A facility doesn't just buy a Waterfall Gateway on a whim at Best Buy.
No.
These devices are deployed to protect critical infrastructure, which means there are massive, incredibly strict regulatory frameworks involved.
Mhm.
We are talking about NRC CIP for power grids in North America,
Yep.
TSA directives for oil pipelines, international standards like IEC 62443, the NIS2 directive in Europe.
All of them.
How on earth does a device with an unauthenticated command injection flaw pass a government regulatory audit?
And that is the compliance trap.
The compliance trap.
Operators use these specific gateways largely to check the compliance boxes for those exact frameworks you just listed. So an auditor comes in, the operator points to the Waterfall hardware and says, look, data only flows one way. We meet the requirement for strict network isolation.
And the auditor just signs off.
The auditor signs off because the compliance frameworks are intensely focused on the data path between the network zones.
I see.
The auditor brings a ruler and measures the thickness of the steel on the front door, to use your analogy, but the regulations simply don't ask probing questions about the web server running on the gateway itself.
So the government is essentially literally ignoring the giant web server-shaped screen door on the back of the building.
That is exactly what's happening. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the regulatory environment actually incentivizes this blindness, and Waterfall's own historical marketing messaging kind of reinforced it.
How so?
Well, for years, the industry narrative around these physical diodes has been that you can, quote, install, configure, and forget.
Install and forget.
Wow.
For a security device protecting a nuclear plant. I can't even wrap my head around that.
It's wild, right? That phrase alone is the true vulnerability here. The compliance checkbox creates a false sense of absolute security.
Yeah.
If a facility operator believes they can just install a magical box at the most sensitive boundary in their network and then literally forget about it, they are never going to actively monitor it.
No, why would they?
Right. They aren't going to aggressively patch it. They aren't going to audit the management interface logs. They are leaving their critical infrastructure wide open to anyone who finds a flaw in the software.
Okay, so recognizing that this install and forget mentality is practically begging for a breach, what do operators actually do right now? If you are listening to this right now and you have one of these WF500s sitting between your corporate IT network and your water treatment facility, what are the immediate actionable steps?
Okay, the very first and most critical action is to check the firmware version on your gateways right now. If you are running version 7.9.1.0 or any earlier version, your system is vulnerable to these 9 CVEs.
Okay.
You must upgrade to firmware version 7.10.0.0 immediately.
7.10.0.0.
Yes. That is the release where the vendor has successfully patched these specific authentication and injection flaws.
Okay, so apply the patch. That's step 1. But we know patching only fixes the known holes. How do you actually secure the device moving forward so this doesn't happen again?
The next step requires completely abandoning that install and forget mindset.
Yep, throw that out.
You need active monitoring. Network administrators must monitor the connections to both the admin and console web UIs. You are specifically looking for unexpected access attempts, particularly from IP addresses on the IT side of the network.
Okay, because those management interfaces are for administrators, right?
Exactly. They should absolutely not be seeing casual network traffic or port scans from the general corporate environment.
Meaning, if, Janet from accounting's desktop computer is suddenly trying to establish a connection to the nuclear plant's gateway admin panel, major alarm bells should be ringing in the Security Operations Center.
That is exactly the kind of anomaly you want to catch immediately, which leads directly to the third step. strict segmentation of the management plane.
What does that look like in practice?
The web panels for these gateways should never be directly reachable from the general IT network. Operators need to implement a jump host.
A jump host. Okay, that being like a highly secure, heavily monitored, isolated intermediary computer. You have to log into the jump host first before you can even see the gateway on the network.
Correct. You force all administrative traffic through that one heavily guarded choke point, and you enforce strict multi-factor authentication to access it.
That makes sense.
Because think about it, if an administrator can reach the gateway's web panel straight from their everyday desk, where they also read emails and browse the internet, an attacker who compromises that desk computer can reach the gateway too.
Yeah, it's just a straight shot.
Furthermore, if you don't absolutely need the web interface on a daily basis, disable it entirely when it is not actively in use for configuration.
Oh, just turn the web server off.
Literally turn it off. Or, if the hardware supports it, rely on out-of-band management like a physical serial console cable. That takes the management interface off the network entirely.
You're basically just reducing the number of doors available for an attacker to even knock on.
Exactly. Minimize the attack surface.
But what if someone is already inside? You mentioned earlier that the path traversal flaw lets attackers delete logs.
Right.
So how do defenders know if they've already been compromised by these specific vulnerabilities before they patched?
That is where it gets tough. Threat hunting for this is currently quite tricky. Nozomi Networks Labs acted responsibly by detailing the vulnerability so vendors could patch, but they have not yet published the specific IOCs.
The indicators of compromise.
Right. They haven't released the exact malicious strings or file hashes an attacker would generate when exploiting this.
So a security team can't just plug a known bad signature into their antivirus scanner and look for a match. They have to do it the hard way.
They do. Defenders have to rely entirely on behavioral threat hunting. You have to comb through whatever remaining system logs you have, looking for web requests to the management interfaces at highly unusual hours.
Like 3 a.m. on a Sunday.
Exactly. You look for administrative logins coming from unexpected source IPs. But most importantly, you look for child processes, like a shell command being executed by the web server process itself.
Because the web server shouldn't be running system-level commands randomly.
Right. If you see that, it simply does not match normal, scheduled administrative activity. It's a huge red flag.
So what does this all mean? If we take a step back and look at the psychology of the industry here, if a company bought this specific device because they were explicitly told by the vendor and the compliance auditors that they could install and forget, how hard is it going to be to convince them today that they now have to actively monitor it, segment it behind jump hosts, disable the web UIs, and constantly hunt for behavioral anomalies? I mean, you are basically asking massive industrial sectors to change their entire operational philosophy overnight.
It's going to be a massive uphill battle. And it raises an important question, And it is a question not just for Waterfall customers, but for the entire cybersecurity industry.
What's that?
How do we audit the management planes of every security appliance currently sitting in an OT environment?
Oh, man.
We are talking about firewalls, industrial switches, intrusion detection systems, and all the other data diodes from different vendors. Because the broader lesson here is utterly inescapable. Every security device, no matter how physically robust, has a management interface.
And an interface means software.
Which means it relies on code. And code always has bugs. Always. If any vendor treats its own admin interface as out of scope for strict security testing, relying on the strength of the primary product to hide software flaws.
Then what?
Then that device is simply the next waterfall waiting to happen.
Wow. It's a sobering realization for anyone relying on physical network segmentation. Let's summarize the core journey we've been on today. We looked deeply at the Waterfall WF500 Unidirectional Gateway. And the ultimate takeaway isn't that the core hardware is a bad product.
Not at all.
The hardware physics actually hold up perfectly. A laser can only shoot light one way down a fiber optic cable.
You really can't hack optics.
You can't. But a security device is always more than its primary hardware mechanism. It is intrinsically tied to the software that runs it, configures it, and manages it on a daily basis.
Right.
The fatal flaw here was a massive design assumption. The developers seemingly treated the software management plane as invisible, believing the physical hardware made the whole package immune.
Yeah, that halo effect.
And that assumption inadvertently created a massive, unauthenticated attack surface right at the boundary of our most critical infrastructure.
It just proves that a physical hardware barrier, no matter how perfectly engineered, is only ever as strong as the software that controls the host machine it sits inside.
Which brings us right back to our cold open.
The screen door.
The screen door on the back of the vault had no lock, and the glossy marketing website still tells the world that the vault itself is impenetrable. But someone, right now, needs to walk around the back of the building and check the door.
Absolutely. And it leaves you, the listener, with this final thought to mull over. If every single unbreachable physical security device deployed in the world today ultimately relies on a network-connected software management interface just to function,
Yeah.
is there really any such thing as true hardware security anymore, or are we always just one unchecked web panel away from total compromise?
Thank you for listening to Zero Day Brief.